Smart Means Business continues here at Smart 24 TV. Now we head into our discussion of the day, and of course we're clearly going to be talking about the micro, small and medium-sized enterprises in Uganda and the need for a recovery fund for these particular enterprises in Uganda's economy and how they will definitely be useful to these particular SMEs. And of course in studio I'm not alone today. I'm joined with two guests that I'm going to give the opportunity to introduce themselves. But of course, I'm going to start from my far left with the gentleman, the businessman in the country, and I'll give him the chance to inform the viewers who he is and his position.
Thank you. Thank you, our viewers. My name is John Walugemba, and I work with the Federation of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises, the umbrella body for all micro, small and medium-sized enterprises in Uganda. We represent over 100,000 direct members and over 700,000 indirect members countrywide in over 20 sectors, actually 27 sectors of the economy.
All right, and on my next, the person who's currently next to me, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you viewers for tuning in. My name is Janet Anasona, a program associate in Siatini, Uganda. Siatini Uganda is a policy advocacy organization working on issues of trade, investment and physical issues.
All right, and now let's dive into our discussion of the day. I'll start with Mr. John Morgan, the Executive Director, Federation of Small and Medium Enterprises in Uganda. So, Mr., how would you take, let's start with the issue of the traders in the Kasita. The traders under Kasita. What is your view on the strike that was taking place recently?
Okay, so as a federation, we supported, we were in solidarity with the initial concerns. Because you see what government did, and you are, remember government has a strategy of import substitution. It means everything that you are bringing in, let us find ways of making it here. So when government has a direction, so import substitution, it adopts tax measures to propagate that idea. So the idea here is that of import substitution. So government has identified sectors that hold potential for growth in this country. And one of those sectors is the cotton, textiles and apparel sector. Remember, our cotton is one of the best in sub-Saharan Africa. So government previously would charge you tax based on the invoice value, how much you paid to buy that thing. Now they said, no, we don't care how much you bought. We shall charge you tax of $3.5 per kilogram. Whether you're bringing material, whether you're bringing finished garments. We said, no, this is unfair because we don't have sufficient cotton to feed our cotton and textile sector. So we have to import fabric. So if you impose that tax, it means you're actually trying to kill the very industries you want to support. So we supported them, and then government changed direction. Government said, no. So long as you're bringing materials and you intend to add value, no tax. 2, if you are bringing a finished garment, but no one else is making it in Uganda, no tax as well. However, if you're importing a garment and someone else is bringing it in, the tax will remain. So some of our colleagues in Kasita are saying, no, we want to go back to the old status quo where if you want to bring in a garment from anywhere in the world, you just bring it in and you just pay small tax on invoice value. You're saying no. We cannot continue being a supermarket for other countries. China is growing. It's about to become the leading economy in the world. What are we gaining from all this? So therefore we do not support this latest strike. We think it's ill-informed. We think our colleagues should consider transitioning into small-scale industries in order to be aligned with the long-term goal of government.
So according to your argument, it's actually more even attached to the Buy Uganda, Build Uganda policy.
Correct.
Where the government is trying to look in the way to make sure that Ugandans support their homemade things.
Yes.
And building, and of which even the Bubu fashion awards that were actually set on board to actually tap into the textile part of it in Uganda, the sector. So clearly, as Mr. John Morgan is saying, this is to clearly show people that we need to support the cotton industry or the fabrics industry here in Uganda to clearly bring about it. But then the traders were actually having more issues in regards to the rent.
Yes.
More so people from the Mukwano Arcaders Association were actually having that particular problem with rent. And they had a month of July that they were being demanded, and most of them claimed that they were not working for that particular month, then they're not fit to pay that money.
Okay, so on that issue, we support them. We believe small-scale entrepreneurs, including traders, should not bear the burden of lockdowns single-handedly. Let's share the risk. If people haven't worked for 1 month or 2 months, why are you asking for rent? They were not working. So you're asking for rent for what? Because for you, the building owner, you don't want to lose, but you want the other small business person to lose. So that is where we said government needs to come out with a policy during a lockdown. How do we share risk? That is across board, whether it's a rent, whether it's utilities, because I saw National Water distributing bills and disconnecting. You need water to fight COVID-19. If you're disconnecting people because of non-payment when they are not working, then it's a pity. So we need something, guidelines during COVID-19, so that we reduce unnecessary conflicts. During COVID-19, how do we handle? Am I allowed to evict a tenant during COVID-19? No. So those are guidelines government should come up with so that we don't have these issues coming up again. So on that issue, we fully support the traders who went on strike. But I think that we need to take it further beyond striking. We need to come up with a position and need to say, look, these are the proposals that we have. What do you think?
Yes. Mrs. Joanita, if you can pick up from that particular, what is your take on that strike regarding the rent issue in Uganda?
Do we support the traders? It is a yes, it is a 50-50. Yes and no. No, since my colleague has talked about the yes, the no is the fact that also these owners of the buildings have loans. Most of them are having challenges. I think they came out in the first lockdown and they said, look here, we also have challenges of loan repayments, of which we are not also going to be exempted for the month of July because of, so probably my thinking was that they should maybe take a 50-50 rent payment. Let them reduce it to a half so that they can at least meet the fact that there was an impact of COVID and they were not working. Not totally saying that they will not pay off the rent, because even the other owners of buildings are also have challenges that they are also, and specifically financial challenges. So I think there should be a 50-50% share of the
rest. Now, Mr. Morgan, do you think these particular arcade owners come up with these to seek for their rent fees because the government has actually put taxes on them and they still have to pay them regardless of the situation that we had?
No, the idea in a free market economy like this one is that I should not set the rules. I should make fair profits. I should engage in fair play. And the umpire to ensure that everyone follows the rules is government. Now, in this particular case, we feel that government is completely and also absconding. Yes, the arcade owners have loans, but government has intervened on issues of loan restructuring. What if government absorbed part of those responsibilities and said, you know what, you guys don't disturb those people. You people get back to work, because ultimately government is the beneficiary when those people pay taxes. So we think that the burden should fall squarely on government to do something. Not to donate money, but to ensure that there is harmony between the landlords and the tenants. To ensure that there is harmony between different groups of people, so that they don't have unnecessary clashes, because ultimately it distracts us, those kinds of clashes distract us from working and getting the economy back on its feet.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Onita, I'm bringing you here now. We've been talking of the ideas that small-scale businesses or small-scale enterprises, micro, small, and the medium-sized enterprises need funding by the government. They need to actually rejuvenate themselves. Quite a number of them have actually lost out in the business aspect or the business sector. Where do you think is where do you think is the real need in terms of government tapping into making sure that these people receive these funds and to ensure some recovery for them?
Where is the real need? So are you talking about the sector to prioritize or the challenges?
The challenges mainly.
We would say that in general, MSMEs have been affected by the impact of COVID. Now it's 2 lockdowns in, and maybe we are also expecting another lockdown after the 3rd wave that is being talked about. So there's deepened marginalization, reduced demand and supply of goods and services. There is an alternation in the value chain, totally. Then also the fact that even these MSMEs still are suffering with a burden of loan repayments. So yes, they really need to be supported in recovery. But also the fact that there is another sector that is usually not looked at so much, and those are the micro enterprises. They have been burdened by I would say the impact on them is so heavy, but yet they are not really, addressed in the issue of support. So yes, they do need to recover. They do need to be supported, and since they have been heavily burdened, we see that most of these micro entrepreneurs have been surviving on their personal savings during the period of lockdown. According to the UNBS statistics, 60% of the micro entrepreneurs have been surviving on their savings, and they've run out of savings as a result. So now they need alternative solutions. So the economic recovery funds come in handy to support the recovery in terms of capital rejuvenations, in terms of supporting them in productivity. So in terms of supporting them to pick up from that deepened marginalization and to also be competitive again. So yes, they really need the recovery fund.
Okay. Now I heard to Mr. John Walugembe in regards to that particular issue. The need for this recovery, where does it take the SMEs and where does it leave these traders?
Okay, so firstly, like my colleague has just indicated, we have had a number of now 2 lockdowns, the first in 2020, the second this year. Both lockdowns have significantly diminished demand. Both lockdowns have led to significant supply chain disruptions. Both lockdowns have led to liquidity and cash flow challenges within businesses. Now, having reopened the economy partially, because the number of MSMEs that are still closed, if you look at education institutions, if you look at businesses that are involved in the entertainment sector and so on, all these are part and parcel of the economy because they are bulk buyers of things. So if they are closed, it means the economy won't really get up on its feet. But we are happy that when the president was reopening, he announced a 200 billion recovery fund to support SMEs to get back on their feet. And what I can say is that we have been in intense discussions, the Federation, CIATINI, the Ministry of Finance, and other stakeholders to ensure that this fund really goes a long way in helping the sector to get back on its feet in this period. The difference between this and other funds in the past is that this one is sector agnostic. Whichever sector you are in, you are likely to benefit if you meet the criteria, which is a good thing. So even for traders, it means that they can apply. Even for people in other sectors, if you're in logistics, if you're in agro-processing, if you're in trading, whatever you're doing in this economy, you can benefit from this fund as long as you meet the criteria. which will be announced by the Minister of Finance in due course.
All right, and quite posing a number of questions in regards to the nature of traders in Uganda, most of which have not been working in regards to that. If I am to head to Mr. Joanna, if you clearly look at these particular sectors, let's say, for instance, women in the business or the women in the markets, talk about some of the findings that the government has actually been laying on board. Do you think that there's a possibility for these funding to actually help them recover in terms of business?
The main challenge of women in business is that most of the women fall under the micro sector. The small businesses, the women that have the limited collateral or productive resources that is required by most of the financial institutions to be able to access these financial or credit facilities that have been put in place by government. So yes, in our discussions, continued discussions, you find that government acknowledges that it has actually put in place post-COVID-19 economic reforms to support these micro. Now we are talking about women, since I said they take 60% of the micro sector. However, they'll tell you we put EMYOGA in place, and EMYOGA is in support of the micro. But like the previous discussions, EMYOGA has its challenges and gaps that are impeding these women from benefiting. So why are they putting them under these economic reforms that are actually having quite a number of challenges? It is because they are lacking collateral to be able to approach financial institutions to access viable alternative solutions to recovery. So you'll find that women have to form groups to be able to access these funds. So this group sort of is their collateral, is their security. In case a group member is not able to comply to a loan or to repay a loan, then the other group members will be the security, will be in position to cover the loan that a group member has not been able to. However, you'll find that these are very big groups, like we've talked about before, that they are limited to circles. These circles are big and limited to circles in the same nature of business. So you find that the economic funds that are available for these women to support them in recovery have quite a number of gaps and holistically need to be readdressed, that holistically need to be addressed to support recovery for women. So you'll find that still, the recovery for these businesses, for the micro enterprises and where women dominate, are very far from recovery because of the structure and the modalities of the economic reforms available to support them in recovery.
All right, Mr. John Mogebe, we're talking about funding now. Let's talk about the funding. Has government given any funding as of now in regarding to making sure that these small enterprises gain from this hardship and actually try to come back into business?
Please repeat the question.
Has the government actually laid enough funds, or has the government laid funds there for the small enterprises in Uganda?
No, government can never provide sufficient funds, and we are not looking at government as a benefactor.
Okay.
What we expect from government primarily is a fair playing ground, so that people, no one wants to be dependent on either government resources or handouts or whatever. SMEs want the opportunity to work fairly. So what we are struggling with at the moment is the issue of access to finance. You have interest rates of close to 20% or beyond. Maybe some have reduced now to 18% and so on. But if you look at microfinance institutions and money lenders, you're looking at 30%, 35%. This is an unsustainable situation. And whereas these funds are important as short-term measures, we believe that longer term, government needs to ensure that there is fair play, there is affordable credit, and people can access it fairly without unnecessary stringent conditions. Now, recently, government brought a proposal to raise the paid-up capital of financial institutions. We believe, as a paid-up, as a federation, that this will make the present situation even worse, because you're just going to have a few foreign banks consolidate their position in this market and dictate the rules of the market. So ultimately, you're going to have a cartel. So that's our concern. Yes, financial experts will say, well, it will improve the stability of financial system. Which stability when people are not getting money to run business? Because money is the lifeblood of the economy. If you have 5 banks who concentrate in purchasing government securities because the yields are higher, and also government itself is borrowing and crowding out the private sector, then you have this situation is going to be perpetuated for a long time. So for us as a federation, our position is government needs to address those issues in the business environment that are so constraining SMEs from operating without recourse to these kinds of grants and so on. Yeah.
All right, now on the reopening of, on the partial lifting of the lockdown, President Museveni had of interest in the fact that it was a decision that was made to actually see that we are reviving the economy. But with the prevailing situations, do you think lifting the lockdown alone has been enough to make sure the economy is going back to a stable situation?
No, not the lockdown alone. Of course, like we said, right now the MSMEs need alternative solutions because now they are down. So what alternative solutions can government put in place? First of all, it can start with market linkages. So now it has put so many economic stimulus funds, quite a number of them are available, the EMIOGA, the UDB fund. Now there is also a proposal of the MSME fund. So now they have, they are really putting a lot of effort in supporting, in liquidifying the MSMEs. But after that, then what happens? They need markets.
Okay.
They need market for their products at the end of the day. So where is the market? So government should now power map markets. Government should, first of all, like we say, be the first market through PPDA for these MSMEs equitably, starting from the micro, the small, the medium enterprises, being able to benefit from these government procurements. Government can as well review the local content bill. You talked about the BUBU, Buy Uganda, Build Uganda. Let them look at their MSMEs as their first clients. Let them build the capacity and create awareness about the AFCFTA as an available market, but also support the MSMEs to prepare to compete on these in these new market paradigms that are coming in. They should support businesses in formalization. Yes, they reduce the UN as well as support them in standardization of their produce. So it's a holistic approach. Now there is a fuel tax for all the drivers. Right now, I feel that impact on that fuel price. The fuel cost is so high. So imagine a micro MSME who has to move their produce maybe from Masaka to Mutukula. The tax on fuel, the internet tax, you're talking about the digitalized markets that now they should be the new platforms. You'll find that most of the MSMEs are actually not even aware of the available digital platforms, the markets they can take advantage of. So they still, government needs to build capacity, needs to create awareness, needs to support in so many holistic ways to support MSMEs to recover.
All right. Mr. there was a grant for small and medium enterprises from the USAID, which is actually coming in as the USAID is seeking for applications for small and medium enterprises in Uganda. How far is this particular fund or grant from the USAID? Or should we consider it as a story that is still in the upbringing and we are not yet into the core of it?
No, I mean, I'm not aware about this particular fund, but what I can say, we don't want to give the impression to SMEs that they are going to survive on handouts and things of that sort.
Okay.
We want them to be for us, we believe that once there's a fair playing field, then SME should be good to go. We shouldn't be babysitting them, because the whole point of an entrepreneur is that you also take risks. So if you're there and you're just a grant entrepreneur, you're just picking grants, UDB, Microfinance Support Center, and so on, you're not an entrepreneur. You're just playing using taxpayers' money.
Okay.
So we want those SMEs that have genuinely been affected by this pandemic to be the ones to benefit from whatever funds are available. Part of our quarrel with some of these other programs is that they attract a lot of opportunists. Once government announces there's a fund, you find all kinds of fake groups appearing to take advantage of this thing.
Circles.
And unfortunately, these government institutions they don't want to work with us.
Okay.
You know, they feel, I don't know why they wouldn't want to work with us, but would help them and say, take this direction, don't take that direction. So we don't want to give false hope to SMEs out there. USAID will give you money, EU will give you money, government will give you money. No, we will be misleading you. We are going to speak for you. We are going to ensure you have a fair playing field. We are going to ensure that when you go to a financial institution, you get money at an affordable rate, and then you do your business. If you have weaknesses internally, we can support you. If you are lucky and USAID gives you money, thank God, you are the lucky one. But out of the 2 million or 3 million SMEs, very few will be that lucky. So my advice to SMEs is that, please, the economy is now open. If you're in a sector that has been allowed to work, please do your best. Don't sit and fold your hands and say, I'm waiting for Emyoga. When will Emyoga come? I'm waiting for UDB money. I'm waiting for Simanya. Now I had a small recovery fund. You just concentrate on your business. If you are lucky that you fall within this category, you apply and you are successful, you just thank God and continue.
Right now, and that is actually going down to the SMEs in Uganda. If at all you are out there as an entrepreneur, you always have to seek for opportunities and be a risk taker, or you clearly use an opportunity that is there to set up something and not benefiting more on what the government has to offer. Like Mr. John Mugambe has said, that you should not benefit on, you should not be waiting for the grants from any organization or the government, or in simple terms, you will become someone who's always waiting for, I wouldn't want to use the word beggar in that way, but someone who's always waiting for support all the time, and you're not moving forward as a person or a business entity. Now, Siatini and FSM, the Federation of the Small Scale Entrepreneurs Enterprises, contributed to the developing of modalities in regards to the recovery fund targeting micro and small businesses, and that is one of the reasons as to why I do have Mrs. Joanita Nasona from Siatini, and also have the Executive Director, Mr. John Mugambe, from the Federation of Small and Medium Enterprises. Now, lastly, Mrs. Joanita Nasona, I want to give me your assessment in regards to why we need a recovery fund for the micro and small businesses in Uganda.
Why we need the recovery fund?
Now, I want to understand why we need it, because every sector needs it. Clearly.
Yes, we do need it because of the dependent marginalization, because of the impact of COVID-19, but also the fact that maybe the policy environment is not as supportive for recovery, but also supporting in terms of liquidity, productive resources to support the micro businesses to recover. So basing on the fact that there has been reduced demand and supply, and that has impacted on the whole value chain, that is from the producer to the market, then we need to resuscitate these economies. We need to resuscitate these businesses. Yes, they need the recovery fund. And we have recovery funds that are being put in place to support the MSMEs in terms of the time taken to access the funds, but also in terms of accountability and transparency by the financial institutions that are going to handle these funds, but also the fact that even those with limited collateral and productive resources should be considered so that they can as well benefit from these funds that are available. Yes. So we propose quite a number of steps that could address the gaps that have been in the previous post-COVID funds that were in place, so that they can support recovery. So we believe, yes, we know that there has been a deepened marginalization. COVID, you cannot, you cannot ignore the fact that there is enhanced marginalization of the MSMEs. However, despite the fact that they've been hit hard, they should also be, like Mr. Walugembe said, they should also bring themselves together. We are not going to babysit them. Take advantage of the digital platforms. They should also, read, identify the available opportunities, take an effort to formalize their businesses, find about the custom procedures that are required. What taxes am I supposed to pay? And in this way, when they formalize, when they're tax compliant, they're able to take advantages of the so many opportunities that are available, so that can support their recovery. So the best way to support the MSMEs is, first of all, to lift them up from informalization to formalization. So I guess in this time they should also work upon that.
All right. Mr. John Walugembe, to sum it up,
yes.
Why is there a need for this recovery fund to the SMEs in Uganda?
No, it's very simple. 90% of the entire private sector in Uganda are micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. They contribute probably over 60 or 70% to our gross domestic product. If you look at the jobs that they create, there are very many. It's the biggest non-farm employer in this country. So if you want to revive the economy, that's the starting point. You have to start by supporting MSMEs. And in a place where the economy has been hit on two sides, consumers are unwilling to spend. So the economy has been hit on the aggregate demand side. Government has a duty to resuscitate demand through different interventions, giving individual tax relief, investing money in public expenditure projects and things of the sort. Secondly, the government also has a duty to ensure that they support supply-side actors like MSMEs through helping them to address liquidity constraints that they may be facing. And then not only that, they need to support them in other internal capacity challenges that they are having. So we believe the fund is necessary, and we hope that it will be announced by the minister soon.
And with just the prevailing conditions in Uganda, that has actually left, if you follow the analysis that comes about, every year we have a number of 400,000 youth who are actually competing for only 80,000 in Uganda, which has actually laid out that most of the Ugandans are feeding into or feeding out from the micro, that is the micro, small and medium-sized enterprises in the businesses, because most of them are placed into what is known as the medium-sized. Is it the micro? Micro to the micro. Yeah. The medium is quite the other. Yeah. So the micro, that is where most of the youth are, and is where most of the growth domestic product in Uganda is coming from. So you could clearly see why the recovery fund is greatly needed. In studio with me, I had Ms. Juanita Nasuna from Siatini, Uganda, and I also had Mr. John Walugembe from the Federation of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises in Uganda as well. For now, SMB does stop here. I'm Joram Post Sonko, and we shall do this next time. This is Smart 24.